Let's talk about silver in Aussie dollars. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Ainslie Insights, brought to you by ainslie.com.au, the home of Ainslie Bullion, Ainslie Crypto, Ainslie Wealth, and the Gold and Silver Standard. Be sure to have a look. Today, welcome back Alex, who's always looking at silver, particularly looking at it in Aussie dollars, but had a few thoughts around that today. How are you going today, Alex?
I'm going really well. I feel like I look at silver more in US than Aussie, but Aussie is becoming more exciting than US for a change. So,
Well, it's certainly that's something that we need to think about, particularly being in Australia. There's a lot of factors at play. If we start off maybe with the bigger picture idea here about silver itself, it seems like we've seen a lot of demand that seemingly is structural here that's going to play out for quite a while. Is that your view? Before we dig into the Aussie dollar stuff, is silver looking pretty good here to you? Because it's looking pretty good to me.
so, we're 5 years deficit in silver, so about around 200 million ounces a year, and there has not been a single new silver, like big silver mine, since 2018. So we're going, most silver is used for industrial purposes, around 70%. And we have a structural deficit of 200 million ounces. Lease rates on silver have started to escalate. So it's starting to look like, forgetting the gold and investment side, that the industrial may be the major driver right now of silver prices.
And people might not understand that, but when things like lease rates are going up, that's telling you there's actual demand there because that it's pushing those rates that are very significant to the market higher because there's really no other alternative. People need the physical. That's how that works, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. So, lease rates have sometimes been up around 30% per annum at the moment. Like, it's
Wow.
really pumping higher. And that's basically someone who owns the silver says, okay, I'll lease it, lease you some silver. So they might take the silver, go use it in a car, but then they've got to still return the same amount of silver. So, you know, um, for those lease rates to be up, people are expecting prices to move 30% just on the lease rates.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point because when you think about those percentages, that makes sense. When you look at the price action, if we look at it in US dollars for the time being, it's sitting at levels that really look like it could be a major breakout on long term cup and handle patterns and things that people talk about all the time. But is that playing into your analysis as well? There's some really key momentum drivers here from the price action.
Yeah, so yesterday in US dollar terms, the price got to about $39.40. When it gets to 39.50 in USD, there'll likely be an escalation to 40. And if you look at the last couple of times silver's hit $40 US per ounce, which has only happened twice, once in 1980 and then once in 2011, it's a very rapid incline to nearly $50 after that. So that is the more likely outcome, that if silver does get to that $40 mark, there's a very rapid pace up to $50. So, a 20% increase.
Yeah, and that, like you said in those two examples, was very quick. So, and silver does that, doesn't it? I mean, it just when it decides to move, it moves with gusto.
But the $50 level is the cup level, is the handle level, right? So we're
Yep.
still quite a ways off the handles. Everyone is getting very excited about the cup and handle, and we've spoken about it so many times over the years, but we're still $10. But it's just when we hit 40, it should rapidly get to that level where everyone is going to get very excited.
So, if we can get excited about in US dollars, this is where the article gets interesting that you were writing and the discussion that we've been having. When you start talking in Aussie dollars, we've just seen really quite sustained weakness in the Aussie here. It hasn't necessarily kept up with what the US dollar has been doing because the US dollar's been weak lately as well, but the Aussie dollar had a bit of strength but didn't really keep up. How do you think about that? Because you combine those two things together, and it can just make absolutely huge impacts to the price of silver. But the drivers of the Aussie dollar here, is it expectations of cuts? Are we out of sync with the Fed? How do you think about the dynamic that's playing behind the Aussie dollar currently?
So if you look at when silver reached highs in US dollar terms, we were on par with the US dollar, or we were 110 versus the US dollar back in those years. So right now we're at 65 cents. That's actually why silver in Aussie terms is at a record high by quite a significant amount. And if you look at the euro and the yen against the US dollar, they've appreciated quite a lot, whereas the Aussie's up maybe 5 cents in the same period. We're not keeping up with the rest of the world. We have our own weakness. And, the RBA, just like the Fed, are holding back on rate cuts as our dollars sink. So, I would say that we are in a similar standing to the US dollar. We have a very weak Aussie dollar right now. Last RBA decision, they spoke about dropping rates. They held, which I personally think was the right decision. So good for them. Not what anyone wants to hear, but I think it was the right decision. This time, unemployment is really starting to get up there. We're at 4.3% now. They are not going to be able to, they have to cut this time. So if we cut before the Fed, our dollar is likely to go down while the US has a sustained weakness, which is driving silver up. So this elusive $2,000 a kilo, for which we're about $2 Aussie an ounce off, is getting close quickly. And if it doesn't hit in the next couple of days, it will hit when the RBA drops, I think.
And that does make a lot of sense, because if we're front running the Fed there seemingly, well, I mean, we weren't. We were behind the curve, and then now if we're potentially ahead, you would expect to see a bit of currency movement. But I suppose to wrap this up, if you think about that, like you said, we could be days away, we could be weeks away. That $2,000 level, kilo level, is certainly psychological level in Australia. Obviously, Australia is not the biggest component of what pushes the silver price around. But do you think there are risks that it sort of stops there and then heads back down? Because I'm seeing at the moment everything looking pretty positive. I could see it keep going. That you talk about that cup and handle pattern that we've discussed. I mean, when gold broke out of that, it just kept going spectacularly for a really long time. If that happens with silver, that's why people are so excited, I suppose. I can certainly see that happening. But what's your counter argument, if any, about what catalysts could exist to actually break that trajectory? What would be the counterpoint that could possibly show up?
So US dollar strength, which right now the two reasons that it's down is because Trump is talking about Powell resigning or Powell being fired or Federal Reserve review. So if that all settles down and stops, you might see US dollar strength, which should drop both silver and Aussie at the same time. So that might put a cap on it. The other thing that is driving the US dollar down at the moment is this trade war and tariffs and the taco trade, which everyone's saying taco trade is over. The terminology there being Trump always chickens out. So if he does postpone these tariffs and, the trade wars subside a bit, then we probably see silver weakening and Aussie strengthening. So because Aussie strengthens with positive trade news. So they are the two things that could potentially lead to this. But I think they both those trades have happened this year. Both those trades have unwound again, and we're back where we are. It's highly unlikely that it's going to happen again.
Yeah, and I think that's an excellent point, just to wrap that up on, that some of those, something that's going to cause it probably isn't something that's happened in the past, because those things that happened in the past never play out quite the same way the second time around. The market's figured it out by now and behaves differently.
Yeah, it's all unwound. So, yeah, I think we're not that far away at all. And so I can stop hearing from people, when are we going to get to $2,000 a kilo? A number that everyone's been getting very excited about in Australia for too long, and we're nearly there.
Well, hopefully any day now, if for no other reason than to stop people badgering you about it. Look, always appreciate your insight into this. We know you always have a great perspective. So thanks for your work on that today, Alex. Really appreciate it.
Hopefully we're there soon.
Thank you, everyone, for watching. We'll chat again soon.